Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Shanita Richardson, and this is my sermon manuscript in fulfillment of the Homiletics Course 501, Preparation for Sermon. Dr. Lester Kitchens is my professor. And today's date is July the 3rd, 2011. Today's scripture is taken from Joshua, the first chapter, verses 1 through 9, which reads, After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I am about to give them to the Israelites. I will give every place where you set your foot, as I promised Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon, and from the great river, the Euphrates, all the Hittite country, to the Mediterranean Sea in the west. No one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to your ancestors to give them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Keep this book of the law always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. Have I commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. My subject for today's sermon is, God is not dead, Moses is. In this society of today, people are fearful of a lot of things. We are afraid to shake each other's hands. Our cars and homes and workplaces are filled with sanitizing lotions of all brands. We're afraid to eat certain foods at certain times of the year according to what the trend is at the time. And we're afraid of big ideas and little ideas. We are afraid that someone is talking about us when we think in our hearts we are good people. We are afraid to let our children go outside and play with other kids. We are afraid to open the windows of our homes and let the sun shine in because someone said it's harmful to the environment. We buy expensive alarm systems to protect our expensive possessions. And we keep our distance from others at all costs because we are afraid of the different diseases and families that are talked about throughout the world. We are afraid of so many things, and yet these very same things are talked about throughout the world. We are afraid of the very same things that our forefathers and mothers did, and yet they survived, and very little happened to them. How did our parents survive the dangers in their era? What did they use for protection from disease and famine and destruction? You probably remember the cuts and bruises and scrapes you got as a child growing up. How did they survive? You probably remember sleeping at night with all the windows up, and maybe the front door was locked, and maybe it wasn't, but nobody of harm came in. You remember. What do you make of this? This is our focus in today's message. We begin by identifying the fact that God is not dead. Moses is. Moses, who was the servant of the Lord, is now dead. Joshua, son of Nun, was Moses' aide, and he is hearing from God. God is specifically speaking to Joshua and no one else. Have you ever heard God's voice? Does God specifically speak to you? This is a critical issue here at this point of the story because just like the commercial says, when E.F. Hutton speaks, everybody listens. So in the case with God, when God speaks to you, you need to be still and listen. And if for some reason you don't know his voice, just be still and listen. Stop talking and listen. Sometimes we can't hear him because we're too busy talking to ourselves or too busy talking ourselves. We talk ourselves into some bad choices, and then we want to blame God for the bad choices we make. It's not God who gave you the instructions, but it's your stinking thinking that put you in the position you're in. Bad debt, your choice. Bad marriage, your choice. Unhealthy relationships, your choice. Self-centeredness, your choice. Unloving heart, your choice. No, God does not like ugly, and he will not choose bad things and situations for you. And so God clarifies to us in the first verse that Moses, now dead, was a servant. And then he looks at Joshua dead in his eye and declares to him that he and the Israelites will cross the Jordan River into the land he is about to give them. God reassures Joshua that the promises he made to Moses still stands, and therefore he will continue the same promise to Joshua and to the Israelites. Growing up as an older child of 4 siblings, I always got the first of everything. My other siblings used to complain, and my mom would always say, "Your turn is coming." And so in our story, it's now Joshua's turn. And then in the verse 3, God gives Joshua a visual perception of what he means by ownership. He says, everywhere Joshua steps will be his. Can you imagine how Joshua felt when God said this to him? Just imagine what it means to you. God said in Matthew 7 through 12, "Ask in my name, and it shall be given." If it's a car you want, ask God. You want a house, you've been obedient, ask God. Everywhere you step, you should take ownership because God in heaven made a promise, and he does not break his promises according to his word. Then God outlines specifically the depth of the territory that will be extended to Joshua and the Israelites. There's a story about an evangelist named James Brown who wrote this experience. And this is what he said through his words. He says, "Some years ago when I was learning to fly, my instructor told me to put the plane into a steep and extended dive. I was totally unprepared for what was about to happen. After a brief time, the engine stalled and the plane began to plunge out of control. It soon became evident that the instructor was not going to help me at all. After a few seconds, which seems like eternity, my mind began to function again. I quickly corrected the situation. Immediately, I turned to the instructor and began to vent my fearful frustration on him. He very calmly said to me, 'There is no position you can get this airplane into that I cannot get you out of.' At that moment, God seemed to be saying to me, 'Remember this, as you serve me, there is no situation you can get yourself into that I cannot get you out of. If you trust me, you will be all right.' This is the lesson that God is trying to tell us today. God assures Joshua by saying he will be protected from anyone who is against him. He makes this promise and reassures this promise as evidenced by how he protected Moses. God reassures us because he protected our mothers. He protected our fathers on those long roads coming from work on those dark streets. God reassures us because he protected our families from generations to generations, and we are still here today being protected. God reassures us because despite our sinful ways and all the mishaps we have caused throughout our lives, we are still here to talk about it. We were delivered from what we could have been broken up from, or what we could have been killed from. Deliverance from drugs, deliverance from jail, deliverance from gangs, deliverance from diseases, cancer, sickness, strife, even deliverance from divorce. Delivered from our wretched lives, from our wretched selves, like the words of the song that says, "Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see." He commits to Joshua that while he protected Moses, he will always protect us too. God uses the word never when he says he will not leave Joshua or the people of Israel. And that word never is an adverb in this particular text. It means not ever, at no time, not in any degree, not under any condition. God said, don't even look back. I got this, and all I want you to do is believe. God encourages Joshua to be strong. Have no fear, because he had his back, and he would help him lead the people of Israel to the land he promised to their ancestors. Then God tells Joshua to be encouraged, to be courageous. Don't fall under pressures, and he encouraged him to be brave. God brings Joshua back to Moses' mission and tells him to remember the law. He tells him to keep it holy and keep it in his heart. He says to always keep the law up front with him and the people and never forget the priority of life. Apply the principles of the law to your personal life and you will prosper in everything that you do. He tells Joshua that remembering the law and keeping the law first priority will bring great rewards in life. God says this is a command, a declaration, and not a choice. The law is principle. And finally, he reassures Joshua's confidence. As long as he believes God is on his side, he should never have no fear. As long as he obeys the law and follows its commandments, God will be with him to protect him always without question. And that's our purpose for today's message. God will protect us always. Just like he protected our mothers and our fathers from past generations, he will also protect us today. It's perhaps hard sometimes wondering where your next meal is coming from. Who will see to your children? You may ask yourself, how am I going to protect my family in this forsaken world? The message today for you is that God is not dead. Moses is. And as long as you stay prayed up and believe on the promise, God will come through and protect you. He will never, ever forsake you. Is there anyone here today that believes on his word? Open your heart and let him come in. He will not forsake you. All you have to do is ask, and he will come into your heart and protect you always. This is the end of my sermon. Thank you.
Questions?
Got to turn it off? You turned it off?